Welcome back to Math That Matters, and today's a big day because we're going to start to get into loans. And in general, the topic of loans has a pretty negative vibe, right?
Sure.
Student loans, car loans. It's just loans are a bummer.
Paying back.
Yeah, it's got a bad vibe. Credit card loans, which and some of these bad reputations are deserved, like credit card loans, definitely. And there are people that flat out think loans are wrong, that they're evil.
Right.
That they're unbiblical, that you shouldn't be involved in them anyway, and they have some good ammunition to support their argument. Our objective in the next couple classes is not to debate really the morality or the ethics of loans, but what we're going to do is we're going to break down loans and try to understand them, to get into the inner workings of loans, because knowledge is power.
Sure, they can work for you or you can work for them.
Yeah, they can be good, they can be bad, they can be ugly. We want to talk about how to make loans good, how to make them as good as possible, and there are some strategies. So defer your judgment on loans in general and just become masters of the loan with us, and we'll be fine. Now, Pete, I want to ask you that some people may say, hey, we've already done loan problems. We have had loan problems the last couple weeks.
Sure.
And that's true, but they've been a certain kind of loan where we borrowed some money at the beginning, we did nothing for some years, we were charged some interest, it could be simple or compound, and then we paid it all back at the end.
Right.
What's wrong with this type of scenario?
Only that no one uses it, right? It's unrealistic. So it's nice in a math book where we want you to do something easy.
Yeah.
But the reality is loans are pretty complicated.
Yeah, and people don't do this because if you do it this way and you make no payments, you're going to get to the end and you're going to be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
All those problems where we saw the huge pie chart, they're going to be against you.
That's bad.
You have to pay all that interest that we were all excited about. Now you got to pay it.
They're better strategies.
Yeah, so this is kind of interesting, but we're not going to do it. And we're going to shift to a new model. This should make sense to you that really the way loans are handled is you still borrow a same amount, no different. You take a bunch of money out at the beginning, but instead of waiting to pay it back, you start making payments even like the next month. About a month after you borrowed it, you're already paying it back. And you do this over time by making these regular payments, right, of the same amount. Notice we're going to use a capital R here. Notice that is not a capital D. You can't say that I'm paying off my loan with regular deposits.
No,
right?
Nor is this the interest rate. This is capital R,
Yeah,
not little
be
r.
careful. R means regular payment. It's similar to the big D, but it's going the other way. It's you paying back instead of you giving money. And if you wanted to find the total amount you paid back on a loan, it would be the sum of all of these R's, right? Which we would find by R and T. I think what we want to do now is jump right into a loan problem and illustrate how they work following this model. So here we go. Okay, we want to start with an example of this new kind of loan. And by the way, this kind of loan is called an amortized loan. You want to get used to hearing that. And all amortized loan means is that you are not going to wait to the end to pay everything back, but you are going to make regular payments as you go throughout the loan. And then some things are going to happen when you make those. If that's going on, you have an amortized loan. So here's a real simple scenario. Suppose that someone was going to borrow $2,000 and they were going to borrow it for a full 2 years. So we have year 1 and year 2 up there. And we're going to get charged 10% interest. Notice I haven't said simple or compound, and there's a reason I left that out because it could be either way. It actually depends on what you do. But for now, we'll just say it's 10% interest. That's per year. So if we did it with the old model, Pete, we take $2,000 out and then tell us what's happening.
Yeah, so we just take the $2,000, we take 10% of that, but we have to do it twice. So that's I equals PRT. And it turns out that the rental fee for a 2-year loan, where we get the $2,000 up front, is $400. And of course, that means the payback is $2,400.
Real simple. Now, this is not an amortized loan because we paid everything at the end. What would make it an amortized loan, Pete? What would we have to do to turn it into an amortized loan, for example?
Yeah, so we could just say, let's make a payment at year 1.
Okay.
And then let's recalculate what's going to happen, and we'll still pay the 10%, but it'll be 10% of a different amount.
Beautiful.
Right?
Let's do that. So per Pete's description, to turn this into an amortized loan, all we have to do is come sometime during the loan and make some kind of payment. Pete decided to pay half of the original amount, okay? And you'll notice we're still borrowing $2,000. We come at year 1 and we say, here's $1,000 back. The question we have for you is at the end of year 2, when you come to settle up the loan and end it all, how much will you pay? Now, you still have Pete's original model over there, and you can look at that, but we want you to look at that model and pause and think and say, how much will you have to pay to completely settle this loan? Give it a shot. Okay, I don't know what you came up with, but I think, Pete, one of the options they're going to come up with, I'll call it option one. And I would say that option one is, listen, I know the original payment owed was $2,400. I got to pay $400 interest because I'm borrowing this money for 2 years. So I think that if I have to pay back $2,400 and I paid $100 here, that R2, $1,000 here, R2 should be $1,400. Does that make sense to you when I attack it that way?
It's a way of thinking through the problem that's not unreasonable. It doesn't mean it's correct, but,
Right.
but at least it has thought behind it.
I will have paid all $2,000 of principal back, right? And I will have paid $400 in interest also.
But it would have been a poor strategy because it still would have cost you the same amount, right?
Yeah.
Not only that is you wouldn't have rented the money for as long.
That's right. There is something inherently unfair about this, isn't there?
Yeah.
What are you
if
feeling?
both cost $2,400, which one would you take?
Yeah, why give them money now?
Right.
Well, I'm afraid I might not have it then, I guess. I don't know.
Well, yeah, that
But-
sounds like a personal problem.
Well, so Pete, how would I make it fair? Let's say I do want to pay back $1,000, so I need to
Okay.
turn this into something more fair. All right,
Yeah.
and what we're going to do is we're going to kind of unpack what that would look like.
Yeah,
all right?
so that $1,000 is it has to do two things, right?
Good. All right.
$1,000 has to pay the rental fee because that's what interest is, and it's also got to take care of reducing the balance of your loan, how much you still owe.
Okay, I'm going to camp on this rental fee for a second. How would I calculate how much interest I owe so far?
Yeah, well, it's just 10% of the balance, right? So 10%
But
of the
just for year
2,000
one.
for 1 year.
Okay, so the I for year one is $2,000. I borrowed $2,000. I'm still borrowing it at 10%, but my time is not 2, it's 1, right? I think this accentuates what's wrong with the original alternative is we didn't borrow $2,000
For 2 years.
for 2 years, so we shouldn't pay a rental fee for that.
Right.
That's like renting a car for a week, but paying them for a month.
So you save a rental fee of $1,000 right
That's
here.
right. Okay. Well, this came out to be $200 interest. That means that when I go to the bank and I give them my $1,000, they're going to say, that's fine, but you owe us $200 for the interest so far, right? We're cool with that, but that doesn't leave everything to go towards principal, does
No.
it?
$800.
Good. So the principal down, I'll call it, is equal to $800. What that means is we started by borrowing $2,000. Our new principal at this moment in time is $2,000 minus $800, or it's $1,200.
Yeah, you still owe $1,200. You're still going to have to pay a fee on that for the second year.
Good. So the P here was $2,000, but the P here was only $1,200. We paid some back, right? We didn't pay $1,000 back because they took some interest. So how do I find the interest in year 2, Pete?
Well, I just need to know what 10% of the balance is. So I just
Good.
take 10% of
PRT.
1,200.
1,200, there's your 10%. Now, I'm tempted to put 2 here because I'm in year 2,
But it's only been borrowed for 1 year, right? So
because we already paid the interest, and that's the
Yeah.
key for amortized loans. When you come and settle up, you have cleared your debt, and you are really starting fresh. So it's 1. In fact, this T is going to be a 1 over and over and over again, and I would end up with $120 interest. So what do I have to pay them at R2?
that's a good question. Well, the balance was 1,200,
Okay,
and
so-
then the fee on that balance was $120.
Good. I still have the balance, and then I have the $120, and it's $1,320. I feel like that's almost a boom box.
Almost. And I was wondering, so does that mean that this loan only cost me $1,320? This is way better. This cost me $2,400.
Wow, we should do this every time, except for whoops.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, there's a half a boom box,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Technically, that was our question. What's payment 2? So that's the boom
That's
box.
true. Yeah. Okay.
But what's
so-
the
so we'll give you a
total?
boom.
Yeah, give us a boom. But I think what you were getting at, Pete, what was the total paid for this loan?
Yeah, so the cost of this loan over here was the 1,000 plus the 1,320. So we've got 2,320. But I actually feel pretty good about that. Do you?
Yeah, because I could have paid $2,400. So I walked out of the bank with $2,000 either way. I got my money. I just started paying it back a little earlier.
Sure,
Right?
sure.
So it seems to me that this is advantageous.
Yes.
Now, that is assuming you can make these payments.
Right, and at least I don't have to ever come up with one payment that's $2,400. So
I've got one problem with it though, Pete, and that's that my payment seems to be changing, and I'm old. I feel like I'm going to get confused.
I think I would get confused
Yeah,
too.
I mean, if I do this every month, like I gotta do this calculation every month.
Well, there may be another way.
Yeah, there may be another way, but before we go to it, I just want to kind of cap this conversation up with explaining again what an amortized loan is. And this is our illustration. An amortized loan is where you come in and make a payment. And the moment you make that payment, Pete, I'm going to say there's three things we have to do.
Okay.
Number one, you have to calculate the interest.
So you're settling with the bank.
Since the last period only. You don't go back to the beginning.
Right.
Calculate the interest since the last payment. Okay? Exactly. Settle up. And you give that to them. Number two, you take that interest out of your payment and find out what your reduction in principal is. So that's step two.
So that's how much of your payment goes toward reducing your loan balance.
Good. And then step three is you take that and you reduce your principal by that amount, and you set up for a new principal and a new calculation.
So the principal keeps changing.
That's right.
Which is really what I've been calling the loan balance.
That's right. And that is the loan balance. So that's the essence of an amortized loan, is that every payment, three things are done. Interest is calculated and paid, principal is reduced, and the loan is reset going forward. Now, back to our dilemma. I really would like a payment to be consistent. I got an idea, Pete.
Okay.
What if I just take $2,320, since that's my total payment, and I cut it in half? That's $1,160. Wouldn't that work if I just said, I don't want to pay $1,000 and $1,320. I want to pay $1,160 twice.
Yeah, well, I mean, we could try it. Again, it's a good thought. It's not necessarily correct.
What's your hunch is what's going to happen if I come in and say, Pete, I got this wired, man. I'm just going to pay $1,160 here, and I'm going to pay it there. What's going to happen over here, Pete?
Well, better things are going to happen because just conceptually, you actually will borrow this money the second year. You'll borrow less money than you had because your first payment is higher.
Does my interest change on this first one?
No.
No, because I'm still borrowing $2,000.
Yeah,
so I take $200 out, but now I've got $960 that goes to knock that down, right?
Yeah.
So, that means I got to change this calculation.
Everything's got to change, and it didn't quite work, but it was a good idea.
Well,
but the thing about this is you actually didn't borrow as much money for as long, if you think about that, which means the rental fee will be less.
Okay. Well, I've got a crazy idea here, Pete. We're not going to do it, but we're going to have them do it.
Okay.
One of my favorite numbers in the world. It's a weird number, but one of my favorite numbers is 1,000. It's so favorite I have to look at it to remember it. It's $1,152.38.
That's one of my favorite too.
It's a great number.
I didn't even have to look.
$1,152.38. I want to know if I happen to come in and pay $1,152.38 at year one. I wonder what my final payment would be at year two.
That is a really good question.
Yeah, and it's so good, I think we should have them do it.
We love them enough to let them do it.
BLQ, follow the exact same thing that Pete and I just did to calculate the new payment for month two and see what you get. We'll meet you on the backside. Okay, well, if you took our challenge seriously, you finished this BLQ, and if you didn't, pause again and go do it, because we're serious about this. But when you do it, here's what you're going to find. When I take the first payment and split it up, $200 goes to interest. I have to pay that. That means the rest goes to principal. I subtract that out of the $2,000, which leaves us our new principal for year two of $1,147.62. We calculate the new interest on that, $104.76. We add it to here, and voila, Pete. What do you notice?
Wow, that's such a favorite number.
That's why it's my favorite number. What this shows is that with every single amortized loan in the world, there is a magic number. There's a number that you can pay regularly. It could be every month, it could be every year, it could be every 10 years. There's a number that if you pay that, although the distribution of principal and interest is changing every month, it sums up to the perfect amount.
That's
pretty
amazing.
Cool, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I called it a magic. It's really not magic though, Pete. When I say it's magic, where does it come from?
It's just a formula.
Exactly.
It's our amortized loan formula. You want to write that formula?
Give it to them. This is our last formula for the financial section,
Yeah,
guys.
we can
so
show them how to get that number.
enjoy
And
the
it'll be
moment.
their favorite number also.
That's right. Okay, well, if you're wondering where that special favorite number came from, it came from this formula. This is our amortized loan formula. So if you see a problem with an amortized loan, this is the formula you got to use. Let's walk through the variables. P, we know it stands for principal, or Pete. No, Pete. What would you?
That's
What
my
in normal words? What would you describe P as?
I would just call that the loan amount.
It is
Does
the
that
loan
seem
amount.
fair?
Why don't you give it to us? That's the loan amount. We call it the principal, but in an amortized loan, that's how much money you borrow. R, I want to say interest rate.
Yeah, that's already here. This
Yeah.
is the rate.
Yeah, that's our interest rate, and that is per year typically, right? In amortized loans, it's almost
Annual.
always annually. Just assume it's annually. Let's go back to that other R.
R is the regular payment,
Here
right?
we go. This might be the magic number, but it is the regular repeating payment that you make every period. N, what is N, Pete? I want to say the number of times it's compounding, but that's not what's going on.
How about the number of payments in 1 year?
It is, okay? In fact, be careful. When I say the number of times it's compounding, there's nothing compounding in this problem. We never use compound interest. We use simple interest to solve this loan. T is the time, or in other words, what, Pete?
The number of years
Of,
of the loan. How long you borrow it
yeah,
for.
not how often you make payments, right?
Right.
How long the whole loan is.
Yeah,
Okay.
so pretty straightforward, huh?
Yeah, so let's maybe punch this example. You know, on your own, I think you can on your own, you can put in these terms into that formula and see if you can solve this for 1152.38. You guys are capable of this. Throw in 10% for the rate, 2,000 for the P, and you're going to solve for this regular payment. All right? So put in all the terms from this problem. There's your T. There's your R. There's your P. Pete, where's your N?
It's annual, right? The number of payments per year is going to be 12. You're paying every month. I
Yeah, N stands for the number of payments because we decided, well, in this one it's annually, right?
Oh,
See, we tricked ourselves here. Yeah, be careful, you guys. The N in this one, look at this scenario. How many payments each year did we make?
that's true. We made one payment
We
per
made
year.
one, so N would be one. Okay?
If we wanted to solve it for a monthly payment, we
You
could do that.
Yeah, so
Sure.
we caught ourselves there, you guys. We made a mistake, and that's fine, but you need to
okay.
catch with that. N is how often you make payments. It's one. So if I changed N to 12, I wouldn't get this number.
Right.
I'd be getting the number that I paid every
That
month.
is very true.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's set up one more example and call it a wrap.
Okay.
Okay, rather than give you another example, you're going to have plenty in your homework. We just thought we would take this one and walk through it quickly with you. We have the loan amount, and we have the interest rate. Notice our N of 1. And Pete's going to walk us through in a calculator how he would solve this. First of all, Pete, unfortunately, our variable isn't a loan. It's tied up
Right.
in there, so how are you going to handle that?
Yeah, not too bad though. But this all is a number, right? You could type that whole thing into your calculator and say that number was like 3 or something.
Yeah.
It would just be 3R equals 2,000, and we divide both sides by 3. So
Good.
not too bad.
So I would actually start with this instead of starting with this
You
guy.
certainly could. If you wanted
Good.
to, you could find this number and do 2,000 divided by that number, and you're good to go.
Will you walk us through the steps to find this number, like what you're going to
Yeah,
punch
so
in on
you
a
have to
single
be
line?
careful. You have to make sure that you have parentheses around the entire top of the fraction, the entire bottom of the fraction, and
another
then
little
this
problem
power
there.
up here. I think I probably would just put parentheses around the negative 1 times 2, but it has to make sure that this is a power.
Yeah, so basically you're just attaching the negative to the end, which is
Yeah.
fine.
Yep, doesn't
Okay.
hurt anything. So I guess if I was trying to find this number all at once, I might just start with this red parenthesis and do a left parenthesis, type the whole entire top of the fraction in. Yeah, the 2, that's a little caret there if you want to. And then negative 1 times 2. Close that parenthesis, close the parenthesis on top of the fraction, and then divided by, and then a left parenthesis. Actually, you don't really need 2 sets of parentheses there. You could just do, yeah,
All right.
that'd do it. But make sure that once you do that and you get this number, that you divide 2,000 by it because you have to solve for R. Or
That's
you
right.
could just type in 2,000 divided by all of this.
So we can take one step sooner and say 2,000 divided by.
Yep.
You need to put a big old bracket
You
on that
would,
if you're
yeah.
going to do it there.
And
right?
brackets are the same thing as parentheses on your calculator.
Yeah.
So Yeah,
So-
and that was the 10, what was the number that they should get out of this for R?
That is
10, your favorite number, your favorite less memorable number.
1152.38.
Yeah, you can tell how much it's my favorite
If you
too.
do that correctly. So you'll have several problems to practice with. If you get stuck, come see us. We'll look forward to seeing you next time.